Good morning, everyone. It's time to go on the record.
Why are they elite? I have a much better apartment than they do. I'm smarter than they are. I'm richer than they are.
After a week of emotional uproar over our immigration policies, President Trump takes his show on the road. We will discuss the villains and the heroes in this week's national drama.
What they're doing on the border is not the way we should handle border security.
Governor Baker does a border reversal. Will any of it stick politically? And one of the Democrats who would like to relieve the governor of his job is here this morning. Bob Massey is our guest today. Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Very good morning to everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Jenner Booth. Thanks for joining us on the record this morning. Summer is officially here, and with the primary election the day after Labor Day, candidates will be working hard in the heat to win over the votes. And our guest this morning is Somerville Democrat Bob Massey. Almost 25 years ago, he was Lieutenant Governor nominee, running with Mark Roosevelt. His 2018 platform is focused on climate change, economic equality, and all-around Ivy Leaguer. He holds degrees from Princeton, Yale Divinity School, and of course, you bury your head in your hands, and Harvard Business School.
Well,
that's an impressive lineup.
I know that, but I didn't. It makes me sound like a sort of elitist snob. And I went to these schools on scholarships, and I certainly didn't plan to do the Triple Crown. But anyway, that's what happened.
We finished it off with Harvard Business School, so that's a pretty good Triple Crown. Thanks for joining us this morning.
From Triple Crown to the Grand Bargain.
There we are.
As you know, the legislature this past week came up with a grand bargain. A minimum wage would go up to $15 an hour over 5 years. But the mandated right now Sunday and holiday extra pay would be eliminated, basically. Is this a good deal overall for workers?
Well, look, so many people, hundreds of thousands of people, fought to increase the minimum wage and fought to move forward paid family and medical leave, and this is a positive step forward. And I'm sorry that we want to reduce the time and a half on Sunday, because this is a time when people should be with their families. But that's part of that agreement. But the point I want to make is this grand bargain is really a pretty piddly arrangement if you compare it to what's happening around the world. You know, we look at $15 minimum wage as radical, providing benefits is radical. You go to other thriving economies, this is routine. Having a decent wage, having paid family leave. In some countries it goes on for as much as a year. So I guess I'm saying, yes, it's an important gain, but there's something sad that we consider something that is basic to many other countries a huge win.
So, would you encourage all the parties involved to agree to this, pull their ballot questions, sign on to this, and the governor should sign it?
Well, I think let's start with the last. The governor finally needs to make a commitment to signing legislation that raises the minimum wage and produces paid
But what about
family.
all the other parties? Unless they agree
No, I
to it,
understand
he
that.
won't
But
do
look,
it.
the governor has been AWOL from the beginning. He's been asked 100 times, what does he think about this idea? He's ducked it, as he's ducked almost everything else.
You could argue that he was negotiating because he wanted to see what else other people would come to the table and do before he commits, because he is the chief executive officer of the Commonwealth.
That's one version. Let him sit back and wait to see what the tide washes up onto his table. This is a different version of a governor who lays out an objective that's going to improve working class families, that understands that people don't have enough.
But let's go back to the parties involved.
This governor has not been willing to lead on anything, holding back and waiting to see what happens to land on his desk.
So my original question, should the parties involved sign on?
Yes, but I want to see the governor lead on this and not wait until everybody gets around to handing him something.
So let's talk about the millionaire's tax. The SJC has found the millionaire's tax was unconstitutional. So you were already, what's the best way to phrase
strongly in favor of it.
And offering ways to spend it too, in the end.
Well,
if
it's going to spend it. It would have spent itself.
So now, how do you pay for the transportation and education programs on your platform?
Well, right now we don't. I mean, here's the reality. We have set up achievements in the past that we are coasting on. You know, we built the T and we established many of the things that help this state become powerful. Today, we're not investing in anything. We're not investing in education or renewable energy or in transportation system. I look out 10 years and I say, you know, I see a state with a modern transportation system, with revived schools. That's where we need to be if we're going to be competitive in the 21st century. But we are not having that revenue discussion at any level of seriousness. And as governor, I want to put in front of people, look, here's the future you could have. Here's the future that we all dream about. I know it might be.
Who pays for that future?
Okay, all right. So I'm a social justice activist who did a doctorate at Harvard Business School. So thinking like a business person, here's how you think about money. 1, what do we want? Number 2, what benefits will we get from it? Number 3, what are other people doing? Number 4, what are the costs of not doing it? Anybody sitting in traffic knows that that's getting worse. Number 5, how much is it going to cost? And number 6, can we find a way to pay for it? That's the way you analyze a future question. Not
so
just
likely taxes would go up, or at least you would
or
push
revenues.
for it.
Yeah, no, look,
Or
taxes
you'd be
have to be
pushing
on the
for it.
table, but revenues. If we built out our renewable energy, we could be exporting electricity, and at full build out, we'd have $6 billion more in taxes. That's why it's a crime that Charlie Baker is still addicted to fossil fuel, and why fossil fuel companies are ripping people off every single month on their utility bill.
Let's switch the conversation to another issue that involves the governor.
Yeah.
He rescinded his decision to send 2 National Guardsmen and a helicopter to the border to help federal law enforcement after the Trump administration started separating children from their parents. Was that the right decision for Baker to make at that point?
Of course it was, but I mean, he shouldn't have sent them in the first place. Look, you know, if a meteor hit the planet and destroyed the planet, 4 days later, Charlie Baker would say, you know, maybe that wasn't a good idea. I mean, he delays so long in offering his response to things that are public outrage, like the putting of children in cages, but every other major issue, he waits forever. And that is exactly the opposite of leadership. You need to know where your leader stands, what values he represents, what future he has in mind. Janet, Ed, have you ever heard him give a speech about where he wants the state to be in 10 years? He hasn't done it.
Now that the president says he's not going to be separating families anymore, should the governor maintain the current policy of not sending anybody to the border?
Absolutely. In fact, the governor should separate himself from the Trump administration. Trump is his party chair. He didn't vote for him. Now he's got to explain to what degree he supports him. He doesn't show up at major public events that are challenging Trump policies. He's never said anything negative about Trump. He hides behind closed doors.
I don't think that's quite true. He has criticized him quite a bit.
Okay, well, we can return to that question, Janet, but compared to the outrage, the offense, the republic-destroying actions of this president, we need an active and bold governor who's willing to call him on his violation of core American values. And I don't think you can, by any stretch, say that's what the governor is doing.
Next item, the Senate now wants to stop the state police from assisting ICE with immigration detentions. If you were governor, would you push the House to follow suit?
Absolutely. I mean, look, ICE has a very specific role. But ICE should not then deputize our entire law enforcement system for many reasons. First of all, we've seen that ICE has violated the original intention of Trump's supposed order, which is to go after people who are felons. Instead, he's breaking up families for people who have a traffic ticket. Secondly, I've talked to police chiefs, I've talked to sheriffs. They say that trying to deputize other law enforcement kills public safety because immigrant communities become victimized. They won't come forward to help solve crimes. Everything plunges into the shadows. People won't come forward to get medical care. This is a horrible idea. It doesn't even achieve its own goals, and it has many other damaging effects.
But should local communities, local police departments make their own decision on what to do about this? Should that decision lie with the local communities?
No, I think the guidance should come from the state, and just as President Obama said, we should restrict any ICE attention to people who are dangerous and who we have a long record of committing crime, and there the issue of deportation comes into high relief. But at this point, he's using a racist attack on brown people and immigrants, and many of us come from the immigrant
Be clear
community.
who the he is you're talking about.
In this case, Trump and then Baker by extension. Okay,
right.
So I mean, Baker tries to say, I don't endorse Trump, and then he does stuff that favors Trump on the sly.
You ready for the OTR pop quiz?
Never, can never be ready.
Here we go. It's just a very simple one.
Okay, yeah, that's
the
what he always
theme of
said.
this week's OTR pop quiz is you've been trumped. You ready? Question 1. What world leader said of Trump's practice of separating migrant children from their parents, it's, I'm quoting here, deeply disturbing. This is wrong. This is not something that we agree with, but did not withdraw an invitation for Trump to visit on July 13th. What world leader said that?
Well, I think this is wrong, but I'm going to say Canada.
The British Prime Minister, Theresa May. The Pope, by the way,
that's part of the larger English.
I knew you were going to go there. I knew you were going to go.
Same family?
Right.
Same
it's all in the same umbrella. Right, I know.
It was kind of right.
Here's question 2. What Trump cabinet secretary was verbally harassed in a Mexican restaurant near the White House over the Trump immigrant child separation policy?
Is that Secretary Nielsen?
That is Secretary Nielsen, the Homeland Security.
All right, get
Secretary.
one.
Well, yeah.
Let's stop there.
No, we have a couple more.
All right.
After the commercial. We'll be right back.